541. Betray her. How did I even betray her? I wanted to mouth those words, but I found myself unable to look away from those deep black eyes of hers. I could only silently purse my lips before explaining myself. She has something that I need. I can give it to you. No, you can't. Ah, her gaze feels piercing. My eye twitched and I found myself hurriedly speaking again. The entity within me, it's still not clear. Kira has a certain item that can help me get rid of it. Is that all? Yes. Then you don't have to worry. What? I don't have to worry. I was confused. How exactly did I have to not be worried? I knew that the seal the previous cleric had placed on me was strong, but I felt it weaken the moment my progression increased once again. It was like a ticking time bomb, ready to explode at any second. I had to tackle this issue now before it was too late. We already knew of your problem when the cleric told us. We? Who was we? The Academy has managed to get in contact with a high-class cleric. They should be able to help you with your problem. Wait, really? I found myself blinking rapidly. This was an unexpected piece of information. It was a pleasant one. However, the joy only lasted for a few seconds before it cooled down considerably. If it's a high-class cleric, then they will surely be able to tell that something might be wrong with me. In fact, they might even figure out my secret. That's what's wrong. As if noticing my internal struggle, Delilah cocked her head. Are you not happy? I am. But, after what happened last time, I'm not sure I'm comfortable with people entering my mind. Oh, Delilah seemed understanding. Even so, you must get rid of it. Or at least, I thought she was, but staring at her, whose eyes were squinted directly while facing me, I found myself taking a step back. That guy. Her face frosted slightly, even displaying hints of disgust. No, that was all she said before fading and appearing back towards the front as time resumed. Instinctively, I reached out for her but stopped the moment I felt a certain gaze stare at me from my right. You. It was Leon, alternating his gaze between her and me, his expression tightened. It's not what you think. Oh, I was just stretching my arm. Yes, that makes sense. It's rather stiff. No, I get it. Forget what you saw. Already have. Explore stories at my virtual library empire. Fuck you. Yes. In spite of Delilah's words, I still chose to confront Kira directly about the mirror. I excused myself and walked toward her. She was sitting next to Aoife, both of them quietly staring ahead, lost in their own thoughts. From the looks of things, the two of them seemed to have fought. Nothing unusual here. The two fighting was pretty much a normal occurrence now. In fact, if the two of them didn't fight, I'd argue that something was wrong. What was the argument about this time? I started with some small talk. I wasn't really sure about how to start the conversation. It wasn't like I could simply ask Kira where the mirror was, right? She'd just look at me weirdly before becoming extremely wary of me. How troublesome. Recalling the time when I had asked her about her aunt, and her response, I knew she certainly might be able to piece a few things together if I wasn't careful enough. Why are you asking? Despite my best attempts at not looking suspicious, the moment I approached the two of them, they both became suspicious. I could just tell what they were saying from their gazes. Has this guy lost it? What does he want from me? Do I owe him money? Maybe I was exaggerating, but it certainly felt like something their expression was saying. I let out a light cough before sitting down next to Kira. You lost it. Is the seat taken? No. Then I'm taking it. Kira's eyes squinted, followed by Aoife. The two seemed to be strangely in sync today. Shoot. What do you want? Kira asked, eyeing me suspiciously. What was up with her? Why are you two acting so weird? I just wanted to sit down and make small talk. That's the fucking problem, Kira pointed out. You are the last person to make small talk. What? I suddenly found myself drifting back to the past, and my mouth went dry. Thinking it over, they had a point. I really wasn't one for small talk. In fact, I couldn't stand it. I licked my lips, trying to shake off the discomfort, but then I noticed Aoife staring at me with an odd expression. Her lips parted as she started to speak. The last time I tried making small talk with you, you straight up ignored me. I did, yes. I apologize. No, you did good there. Kira suddenly patted me on the shoulder. Fuck, why does the back of my head suddenly feel hot? I ignored the sensation and pursed my lips. Oh, I would too had I been in your scenario. Then again, Aoife is more tolerable than Evelyn. Evelyn, what did she do? What didn't she do? Kira suddenly made an exaggerated expression. What didn't she do? That girl, she talks way too much. She's like some sort of close-ranged mage, spitting one spell faster than the other. I wanted to refute Kira's words, but the argument never quite formed. Evelyn was indeed like a machine gun when she got comfortable. She'd fire off one word after another, each sentence faster than the last, leaving little room for anyone else to speak. The thought alone gave me a headache. Seeing how Aoife was also nodding her head, it seemed like she felt the same way. The three of us then started to chat together. The conversation quickly veered away from my original goal, drifting into all sorts of nonsense that had nothing to do with the situation. Apparently, the walls in the kasha were quite thin. According to Kira, Aoife would occasionally sing, and it scared several cadets, making them believe that ghosts haunted some of the rooms. That was pretty funny to hear. Especially when I saw Aoife try her best to not be embarrassed while mumbling, "It wasn't that bad. You guys are exaggerating." No, it was certainly believable. There was also some gossip regarding Leon. That was one that was really interesting. According to Aoife, Leon was nervous before his match. He apparently carried a book of jokes around with him and recited them right before his match in order to calm himself down. I felt my worldview change upon hearing her words. Who would have thought Leon was like that? And also, a parent. Please get ready. We will be departing now. The portals have been set up, so gather your belongings and enter the portal. Flicking my head towards the front, I suddenly noticed a portal had appeared with Delilah and the professor standing next to me. While taking a peek at Delilah, I noticed she seemed a little different than before. What exactly, though? I rubbed the back of my neck. For some strange reason, the hair at the back of my neck was standing. We're leaving. All right, I can't with this place anymore. Kira was the first one to stand up, looking all excited. She clearly didn't enjoy her experience here. However, seeing her like that, I felt myself grow more anxious. No, not yet, I've yet to. And before I knew it, my hand reached out for hers. Wait, Kira froze on the spot, her eyes widening. That wasn't the worst part. No, it was the sudden chill that I felt at the back of my neck, threatening to consume me entirely. Inwardly panicking, I found myself pressing the second leaf. Fuck it, I should have done this from the start. And then I saw it. Kira's past. Have they left? Rosanna Astrid asked, peering out the window of her office. Her eyes briefly lingered on the blue sky before drifting down to the city below. Several long lines stretched out, all waiting for food to be served. As she watched the lines, she sensed the presence of those from the Empire fading away, one by one, and her expression softened. Things are going to get quite busy soon enough. I should start preparing for that. Just as she was about to turn away, her gaze paused on a particular line. There, she spotted the silhouette of a figure, someone who seemed vaguely familiar, yet not quite. However, right as she was about to get a better look, the figure faded from her view, leaving her at a complete loss. How strange, she muttered to herself, rubbing her head. How very strange. Line up, please. If you want food, please line up in a single line. Food was slowly being served to the people waiting in line. The workers were efficient, handing out one meal and drink at a time. Despite their speed, the line never seemed to end. From children to adults, the line was filled with people desperately seeking food. Meat or veggies? Quote ellipsis dot. He. An old man suddenly smiled, rubbing the back of his head with a sheepish grin. His gaze alternated between the meat and vegetable soup. Likes both, choose which. He was hungry. Want meat. Meat. The worker spared the old man a glance before filling the bowl. Okay, thank you. The worker quickly handed the food to the old man, who quietly left. It was food. The old man felt very thankful to the worker. They were very nice. Even though he was very dumb, they gave him good. He. Holding on to the bowl, the old man walked away. He didn't really know where he was going, but his steps led him to a place that felt familiar. It was a quiet alleyway, and he sat down in front of a small set of stairs, beginning to eat his food. Just as he was about to take his first bite, a group of people appeared in front of him. Their clothes were ragged, and their frames were thin. Even though things were slowly getting better, food was still scarce. Oi! The old man raised his head upon hearing one of them call out for him. A happy smile surfaced on his face. Yes, the people didn't answer and instead eyed his food. That's a lot of food. Ah, yes. The old man looked at the food in his bowl and laughed. Food, lots. He looked silly for his age, causing a small laugh to ripple through the group. They made fun of him, calling him all sorts of names. He's retarded. Taking food from him should be easy. Listening to the comments, M found himself smiling. They talked to me. How very nice of them. Nobody liked to talk with M. Could he maybe become friends with them? Stepping forward, one of the group pointed at the old man's food. Give it to us. M looked surprised. They want his food. But, we need food to work. Feed our families. You don't work, right? Ah, that makes sense. Yes, M is stupid. He doesn't work and they work. Even though I is stupid, I is kind. He helps people. Okay, sweet. Ha ha ha, this easy. As soon as the old man extended his bowl, the group of people moved forward to grab the bowl, but just as they were about to take it, a loud shout echoed. Hey, what sort? 3 people appeared at the corner of the alleyway. They glanced at the old man who was quietly handing his bowl before shifting it towards the group of people. With machetes in hand, they looked intimidating, enough to make the group of people step back in fear. Oh shit, run, Wait. Seeing them run, the old man tried to stand and chase after them, but he was quickly stopped by the group of 3. Stop, but, it's all right. One of the 3 cut him off, scratching the side of his neck. You don't need to give your food like that. Feed yourself first. They have plenty of food. The old man blinked his eyes while looking at the 3 people. They looked sad. Why were they sad? Oh, if you say so. Even though he said that he didn't touch his food. When they came back, he gave them. Seeing this, the expression of the 3 changed again. Hey, do you want to be friends? Friends. M's head flicked to the 3, his eyes sparkling. Friends. They want to be friends. But why do they look so sad? You can call me Gig. They started introducing themselves. Con for me, and I'm Min. Gig, Con, Min. Yes. M suddenly smiled. Why did the names sound so familiar? He can't remember very well. He is sorry he can't remember. No, it doesn't matter. He suddenly found himself bursting with joy. He made friends. Him dumself make friends. Reaching out for him, Khan gently spoke. Come, let's go. Yes. The old man grabbed Khan's hand and moved away from the alley. As he did, his eyes fell on the sky above and a happy smile surfaced on his lips. Sky is happy, M is happy. 542. Boom. The space shifted, forming a small portal through which several figures emerged. We're back. It's really the academy. I can't believe it. Am I dreaming? As they stepped into the familiar surroundings, several of the cadets couldn't hide their emotions. Though it didn't reach the point of tears, one could see the noticeable longing on their faces as they stepped into the familiar environment. It had truly been quite a while. Finally, they were back home. At least, this was how they felt at first. Wait, are we really back? In the midst of their cheers, they suddenly took notice of the academy's condition, their expressions quickly changing to one of bewilderment. What is this? Did we really return? Or are we still in the Kasha? To their shock and confusion, the academy they had returned to was nothing like the one they had left behind. If one could describe the current spectacle, it'd be ruins. This place is in total ruins. Leon thought while looking around him. The buildings were battered, chunks missing, and some collapsed to the ground. Vegetation was torn up, and shards of glass littered the area, adding to the chaos. That wasn't all. As Leon surveyed his surroundings, he spotted several professors and guards in the distance, all moving with haste. Hurry up, we need help there, quick. Their voices were faint given the distance, but he could hear it all. And yet, that wasn't the most surprising part. Far from it. Look, take a look at the sky. When someone pointed it out, several of the cadets' eyes widened in shock. They gazed up at a section of the sky, completely grayed out, resembling the eerie sky of the Kasha from before. Thankfully, the gray patch in the sky wasn't very large, it only covered a specific area. Leon immediately recognized the direction it covered. It's coming from the same direction where the mirror crack is. His face grew grim, and when he turned to look at Julian, he found whatever word that was about to come out of his mouth get caught in his throat. What in the? Are you okay? Leon nudged Julian on the arm but received no response. Taking a closer look at him, Leon's face changed subtly. How could he not be shocked? Julian wasn't the type to show his emotions. Most of the time, he tended to bury his feelings deep within him. Even if he felt extreme fear, he only tended to show them when he found himself unable to. Usually, they'd be situations that were extremely dire, or when he absolutely couldn't hold his laugh. This was what Leon knew and understood about Julian after spending so much time with him. It was how it was supposed to be, and yet, what happened? Julian's expression was one of clear surprise, mixed with what Leon could only describe as faint traces of fear. Fear, Julian. His face was pale, his lips dry, and his pupils were constricted. Even in the most dire of situations, Leon had never seen Julian like this. What in the world was happening? And then he snapped out of it. As if his soul had just returned to his body, Julian trembled, his pupils shifting before their eyes finally met. Leon took the chance to speak to him. He wanted to understand what was going on. Did something happen? I'm fine. But Julian cut him off, his voice sounding somewhat hoarse. I'm okay, he repeated as if that would make Leon buy his words. It didn't. We're back. As if only realizing now that they were back in the academy, Julian looked around before nodding. That was a lot faster than I expected. Not bad. Julian was doing his best to conceal whatever was troubling him, and right as he did, the Chancellor stepped out of the portal. She then dismissed everyone present. But just before dismissing, she said something along the lines of, "Class will resume in a week's time. Take the time to rest. We're currently lacking in staff, so there might be a potential delay." She didn't explain any further. She didn't need to. Everyone clearly understood this wasn't something that they were supposed to know. In the end, everyone quickly left for their room or to head back home. Given the situation, they allowed the cadets to leave the premises. In fact, they encouraged it. "I'll head back first." Julian quickly excused himself, and Leon watched him with a grim expression until he eventually disappeared from sight. He remained standing on the spot for an unknown period of time until he eventually pulled his gaze away. He didn't understand the reason behind Julian's weird actions, but he didn't pry further. This was his private situation. If Julian didn't tell him, then it meant it was none of his business. At least, for now. I should get back too. Glancing at the time and seeing it was already 5 in the afternoon, Leon began making his way back toward the dormitories. The walk back wasn't long. It was about a 5-minute walk. Along the way, he would look at the state of the academy. It was a mess. The park Leon usually passed through on his way to the dormitories was a stark contrast to what it once was. Many trees were broken or split in half, benches were overturned, and many of the flowers were crushed. Continue reading at my virtual library empire. It was a sight that fully displayed just how serious the situation at the academy had been. Just what on earth happened? Surely the mirror crack's destabilization can't be this bad, right? It wasn't like this hadn't happened in the past. It was just that he had never heard of one this powerful before. This was especially concerning given how the mirror crack found at the academy was one of the weakest. How bad was the situation in other places where the mirror cracks were filled with powerful monsters? There's a lot of powerful people in Bremer, so that might be safe, but I'm not sure about the other places. Some places might even be sacrificed. In any case, Leon quickly shook away those thoughts and managed to get into his room as he closed the door behind him and sat down on his desk. Perched next to the desk was a small mirror where he could see his own reflection. He was just about to lean back on the chair when his entire body froze. Bah! Thump! A steady, powerful pulse throbbed in his mind, echoing the rhythmic beat of a heart. Leon found himself unable to move. Bah! Thump! The pulse throbbed once more, jarring Leon as he instinctively gripped the armrests, his fingers digging in so fiercely that the wood cracked beneath his grip. Bang! What's going on? Panic started to set in Leon's mind. This was the first time something like this had happened, and he found himself losing control of his body. What sort of UHA? The shock intensified as Leon lifted his gaze, his eyes locking onto his reflection. Deep, dark lines marred his face, stretching down to his chest, where a faint, eerie glow bled through the fabric of his shirt. Leon started to hyperventilate, the panic taking over his mind. He tried to stay rational, but he couldn't. He had lost full control of his body and he just found himself trembling on the spot. What's going on? What is happening? Leon wanted to scream, but his voice refused to leave. He wanted to run, but his legs refused to budge. He wanted to. Boom! A blinding surge of light erupted from Leon's chest, filling the room with an intense glow that consumed everything in its path. Leon found himself flying back as a result of the light, crashing against the bed behind him. Bang! Ook! His back ached from the impact, but Leon barely registered the pain. As the light slowly receded, he discovered he could move again, and an overwhelming sense of relief washed over him. Yes, I can finally, His words halted then, lifting his head slightly, his eyes paused on the levitating object before him. Bathed in a soft white glow, a black chalice hovered just inches from his face, drifting slowly in the air. Leon hurriedly lowered his head to stare at his chest, and it was then that his eyes widened massively. Ah, drip, drip. As a dripping sound filled the room, the color red stained the floor, pooling around his feet as Leon found himself looking down at his chest, or what was missing of it. Staring at the gaping hole in his chest and then raising his head to look at the chalice in front of him, Leon suddenly felt his legs buckle beneath him. Thud. Falling to his knees, he stared wide-eyed at the chalice in the air. How could? In his shock, the chalice drifted gently downward, coming to rest just beneath his face. Leon's eyes fixed on the crimson liquid filling the cup, its crimson red hue resembling his own blood. No, that was his blood. Within the liquid, his reflection stared back at him, or at least, what he thought was his reflection. As Leon stared into the reflection, another figure slowly began to overlap with his own. The image was hazy, impossible to fully make out, but he could see their mouth move. Leon's mind was hazy, and in a situation where he should have already been dead, he was still conscious. Leon focused on the figure's mouth within the chalice, barely managing to make out its words. He wasn't even sure he read correctly, but it almost felt like it was saying, "Drink. Drink." Leon's mind was very hazy. With all the blood loss, he could barely stay conscious. His mind raced, but given the weight of his situation, Leon found himself leaning forward, his lips brushing the cold rim of the chalice. The last thing he remembered before passing out was the iron-like taste, flooding his tongue and lingering in every corner of his mouth. Everything after that felt like a long dream. One that he couldn't recall any details about. No, that was a lie. He did remember something, but it was just faint. It was more like several voices, one that sounded like a conversation between him and someone else. The figure within the reflection. It went like, "You, who are you? What is going on? Single quote. Who am I?" Replying to him was another voice. One that was filled with hesitation, confusion even. As though they had just woken up from a long and terrible dream. Right, I don't even really know myself. It's been so long. What? Noel. So he called himself. That's your name? Yes, that's my name. I am Noel. Noel Rowe. 543. Clank. I closed the door behind me. I could hardly think. Everything around me was a blur as I stumbled, my hands brushing against the wall for support until I finally reached my bed and sat down. My breathing was fast, and images continued to replay inside of my mind. How could I had used the second leaf on Kira? It worked. I was able to catch a glimpse of her past. What she felt, and understood exactly what had happened to her in the past. But that wasn't what shocked me. No, far from it. Fog. Black fog. Within the haze of my vision, a faint black fog crept in, lurking in one particular scene, until it swallowed everything, obscuring my sight completely. I couldn't see any further from the point, and the next moment, I found myself waking back up. That fog. It felt suffocating, and yet, it almost felt resonating. Something about the fog resonated with me, and that idea sent my entire body into a state of chills. Normally, something like this wouldn't faze me, but for some reason, the black fog repulsed me, filling me with a deep, unsettling dread. What was it? The mirror. The worst part was what the black fog hid. It shrouded the very scene tied to Kira's deepest trauma, the key piece to understanding where the mirror was. Everything cut off from that point, and I couldn't figure out what happened next. How troublesome. I wiped the sweat from my forehead and glanced toward the nearest mirror, checking my reflection. My hair was disheveled and my face was pale. I looked as though I had just woken up from a long coma. One that may have lasted several years. Single quote. I thought I'd get my answers by using the second leaf, but it only made things more troublesome for me. What is that black fog, and why do I feel so uneasy about it? What about the mirror? Where is it? Do I really have no choice but to talk about it with Kira? What about the cleric Delilah talked about? Should I? All sorts of thoughts and questions flooded my mind all of a sudden. They left me in a state of complete confusion, struggling to figure out which direction I should take. However, I knew I couldn't afford to waste time lost in my thoughts. Therefore, after a few short minutes, I clenched my teeth and stood up. Even though things seem safe for now, I can't afford to waste any more time. He might try to take control of this body again. Yes, I should just talk with her. I had dragged this out for long enough. Quote. Need to figure out where the mirror is before it's too late for me. How suffocating. A pair of red eyes gazed blankly at the white ceiling above. Everything feels suffocating. Her soft mumbles echoed in the otherwise quiet room as she cradled her head in both hands. The room was dark, and her eyes shone within the darkness. Kira really hated the darkness. It reminded her too much of that time. And yet, she couldn't do without the darkness. Her powers were related to the darn darkness. Hence why she chose to remain in the darkness. She felt suffocated. She hated every second of it, but she also couldn't do without it. Was this how it worked for drug addicts? Quote. Kaka. Kira let out a soft chuckle. It was one of her usual weird-sounding ones, but she didn't smile as she laughed. In more ways than one, it was a laugh that felt forced. TRR. At that moment, her communication device vibrated. She slowly picked it up, revealing a message on it. I've been told about the break. Come back home. The sender was none other than her father. Craw. A cracking sound echoed in her mind, like the sound of a crack forming in a plate. A new message appeared right after. It has been a long time since you last came back home. It would be good if you came. Bring your friends along. Craw. Even more cracks began to spread within the plate, widening with each passing moment. Kira's face started to falter. Your stepmother is pregnant. You're going to be a sister, so. Bang. The communication device flew across the room, shattering into millions of pieces upon impact. Kira's face changed as she looked at the remains of the communication device. It was dark, but she could see everything. Suffocating. Muttering to herself, Kira walked over to the nearest drawer, pulled out several licorice sticks, and popped them into her mouth. They helped her alleviate some of her stress, but not enough. She licked her lips. They were quite dry. A strange tingle ran through her body, making her left eye twitch as her gaze drifted toward another drawer. Ha. Unknowingly, her breathing grew more labored. That one won't hurt, right? Kira licked her lips once more, feeling an odd pull toward that specific drawer. Her hand reached out, slowly opening it to reveal a small box tucked inside. It was a familiar box, one she hadn't seen in quite a while. Finding her chest tremble at the sight of the box, she reached out for the packet, her hand trembling slightly. It had been so long. Yeah, one won't hurt. She needed one desperately. The licorice sticks were just not cutting it. Carefully licking her lips, Kira opened the box, the faint smell of tobacco spreading into the air. Kira's body trembled at the smell as she reached out for one of the cigarettes, her breathing growing even rougher. Pressing her lips together, she carefully nestled the cigarette between them. Raising her finger, a small flame flickered to life, casting a glow around her. As the darkness dispersed, Kira was able to get a better look at the cigarette nestled in her lips and her chest trembled. Yes, just one won't hurt. Kira brought the flame next to the cigarette and was just about to light it up when a knock suddenly sounded, snapping her out of it. Experience more tales on my virtual library empire. Realizing what she was about to do, Kira quickly swallowed her saliva, placed the cigarette back into the box, and tossed it into the drawer. She then walked towards the door. Who is it? Quote. Fuck, why aren't you replying? Don't tell me it's that annoying princess. Kira's face fell and she approached the door, swinging it open rapidly. Fucking bitch, all. Kira's words stopped halfway through as she noticed the figure standing before her. Immediately, her mouth stopped and her large eyes blinked in succession. What are you? Were you about to smoke? Julian's voice cut her off before she could finish, stunning her on the spot. Looking at him, he seemed disheveled, his face pale and worn. Did he just come back from a workout? Smoking, what are you on about? Why would I? I can smell the tobacco in the air. Kira swallowed her saliva and pressed her lips together. She felt ashamed, but only for a brief moment before she suddenly frowned. Wait, why do I even care if he knows? She was a full-grown adult. What she did was her own private matter. Her decisions were hers, and hers alone. Something within her started to boil. As she directed her gaze towards Julian. Fuck, you know what? Kira became direct with him. I was about to smoke, alright. I've been rather stressed lately and I needed to smoke. Do you have a problem with that? 'Cause I don't give two fuck. No, I don't. Julian cut her off, leaving her stunned. You don't? No, why would I? But, that was then. I don't care anymore. It's the past. I've long stopped clinging to it. What? Kira blinked her eyes. Before she could say a word, Julian stepped into the room, casually scanning his surroundings before flipping on the lights and sitting down. Right then, his eyes fell on a certain drawer which he opened to reveal a small box. He gave it a casual glance before taking it and bringing it to his lips. As he did, he looked at the stunned Kira while mumbling. "You should too." Recovering from her shock, Kira closed the door behind her and walked towards Julian, her brows furrowed. "Should what?" Puff. Blowing into the air, Julian dryly replied. Stop clinging to the past. Across the 4 empires, countless churches stood, each dedicated to their own revered gods. Among them, the most renowned were the Flamebound Sanctuary, the Monastery of Seated Stars, the Cathedral of Emberheart, and the Temple of Awakened Sight. Belonging to the Seer doctrine, the Temple of Awakened Sight was the grandest of them all, serving as the largest church for the devoted followers of Oricleus. In the vast halls of the church, a lone figure stood beneath one of the altars, silently praying before the statue that loomed in front of him. The statue depicted a giant with a large eye, one that seemed to overlook the entire world beneath it. He looked immersed in his prayers, as though he was lost in his worship for his god. "It's good that you're so devoted." Awakening him from his prayers was a soft voice. Slowly opening his eyes, Jackal turned his head, his gaze eventually settling on Cardinal Ambrose, who approached him with a calm smile on his face. "Your Eminence." Jackal quietly lowered his head in respect. "Ha ha." The Cardinal merely laughed, dismissing him with his hand. "There's no need for you to do that. There will eventually come a time when I will be the one doing that to you." Yes. Jackal didn't deny his words. In the end, he also believed them to be true. He was none other than the fragment of the Holy Seer, Oricleus. He was the chosen one. "How was your assimilation? How are you feeling?" "It's weird," Jackal responded, lowering his head to watch his arms as he clenched and unclenched them. "Ever since assimilating with the blood, I've been having visions. Strange ones. Some make sense, others don't. But in every single one, there's always something I notice." "Oh." The Cardinal raised his brow with interest. "A black fog." "Black fog. Yes," Jackal calmly explained. "It doesn't ever do anything, it just appears in the visions, quietly observing everything. Just like me." How should I say this?" Jackal pinched his chin, falling into deep contemplation before mumbling. "It's as if I'm seeing an intruder, watching what is supposed to belong to me." Yes, something like that. It had occurred in his most recent vision, one of a very grand place where a small child with long white hair and red eyes appeared. The black fog appeared there, obscuring his vision. An uncomfortable sensation washed over him as he gazed at the fog, as though something that should have been his was being used by someone else, obscuring his own visions. "Thief." He glanced towards the Cardinal. "Out there, there's a thief. They've stolen my blood and assimilated with it." Jackal's eyes grew hazy as his expression frosted. "That's unacceptable." 544. Have you ever experienced the loss of someone important to you? Kira's voice drifted carelessly through the air as she stared absent-mindedly into the ceiling of the room. Alongside the drift of her voice, smoke swirled through the air. "I have," a dry voice replied shortly after, a pair of hazel eyes fixed on the ceiling above. The two sat side by side, enveloped in the comforting, familiar scent of smoke. Not too close, but not too far either. "Then do you remember the last thing they said to you?" "I do." "The last meal you shared?" "Of course." "The last laugh you shared?" "Yes." "The way they looked at you before you lost them?" Julian paused and looked at Kira. She seemed lost in her own thoughts, her mind drifting towards a certain memory. He nodded once more. "It's all I can ever do." How could he forget when it was all he used to think about? The last meal, the last joke, the last goodbye, the last, everything. He remembered all of it. It's crazy what the mind can recall during the moments we lose someone. A soft, yet disguised smile marred Julian's features. "Right." Kira inhaled deeply from her cigarette, her crimson eyes lazily following the trail of smoke as it twisted into the air. "No one really knows when you'll see someone for the last time. I certainly didn't think I wouldn't see my mother for the last time at my age." Puff. She blew into the air. "And then one day, they're just gone. No rewinds, no second chances, just gone." Her voice strained a little. She wasn't even sure why she was talking so much, but something about the afterburn of the cigarettes and the familiar smell that lingered in the air made her feel so vulnerable. When had she ever been like this? "I didn't think she'd stay with me forever." No, I knew since young that one day she'd leave me one day. I just didn't think they'd leave you so soon. Julian finished her sentence, leaving Kira with her mouth slightly open. After a moment, she closed it and nodded. Yeah, Kira's head finally shifted away from the ceiling and onto Julian. Quote. Looks like you've gone through something similar. Maybe, but I was the one who left. Not him. Julian smiled ambiguously, his gaze drifting towards the cigarette in his hand. He still hated the taste, the sharp afterburn that lingered at the back of his throat and the smell that seemed to fill the air, forcing his nostrils to scrunch up. And yet, he also felt liberated in some way. How long had it been since he felt so clear-headed? Puff. Taking a drag of his own cigarette, he began to speak. Sometimes, I wonder why I do the things that I do. Do I just want to achieve my goal, or is it because I just can't move on? He shrugged. People will tell you to move on, to let go, but they never explain how. Tell me about it. Kira chuckled, taking a drag of her own cigarette. It's all I ever hear, but nobody fucking explains me shit. How the fuck am I supposed to let go when I don't want to forget? The moment I let go, I feel like she'll die for real. But isn't she? They say someone dies when their heart stops beating, but I don't believe that. Kira exhaled slowly, sending a puff of smoke into the air. Puff. Quote. That's bullshit. Yeah, your heart stops, but you're still remembered. You're still someone to somebody. You still exist. But what if they forget you? Would you still be here? She tapped the cigarette, letting the ash fall to the ground, and then jabbed the air with it, as if emphasizing her point. That, to me, is when someone truly dies. When there's no one or anything left to remember you by. To her words, Julian had nothing to say. He thought about it, he tried to argue with it, and yet, nothing. He had nothing to rebuke her with. Leaning his head back, he suddenly found himself smiling. I guess you're right. In some sense, we were never meant to forget. Quote. Kira pursed her lips, her eyes staring blankly at the ceiling. The only thing she could hear was Julian's soft, yet dry, voice. Letting go means erasing the past. It felt therapeutic, relaxing, almost. Should we erase the past? Erase everything that made us reach this point? Julian shook his head. I guess not. What matters most isn't learning to let go, but learning how to carry it with you, not as a weight, but as a reminder. A reminder of where you once were and where you are now. The longer Julian stared at Kira, the more he sensed she was begging to shape into who he once was. He recognized that look all too well. The suffocating grip of the past, unable to let go, clinging to memories that shaped every decision, he'd been there. He understood exactly what it was like. Was this why he was speaking like this? He wasn't really sure. He just felt like he was seeing his own reflection. Yes, a message. This was a message to his previous self. So what are you saying? Kira's eyes suddenly drifted away from the ceiling. Quote. Are you saying that I should remind myself of the pain? To endure it so that I can remind myself of the past? Is that your way of saying I should be stronger? No. Julian shook his head, his eyes squinting as he thought. Strength doesn't come from pretending that pain doesn't exist. Pain does exist, and ignoring it just means ignoring all of your problems. The more something hurts, the bigger the problem. He found out the hard way. He thought he was strong. Enduring pain, taking on as much pain as possible while pushing his body to its limit. He wasn't. He was weak, still was, but getting stronger by the day. And that was enough. Strength comes from when you realize that pain does exist and that you can't ignore it. Julian lowered his gaze towards the cigarette nestled in his fingers. It reminded him of the times in the past. It comes from when you find the courage to do something about it. After all, the grueling, painful moments. The endless hours of struggle. The cancer. Coming to terms with the inevitability of death. And letting go. Life doesn't pause for us. If only it did, how much easier would life be? But it moves forward, relentlessly. It doesn't wait for anyone. Quote. Just as we should. So, in some sense, it's about honoring what was while making room for what could be. After all, that's how someone grows. Quote. Those were the last words exchanged between them before the room fell into complete silence. Aside from the gentle exhale of smoke and their steady breathing, there was nothing else to fill the space. Then, Kira shattered the silence. You're cringe, you know that. Quote. Haha. Julian couldn't help but laugh at her words. Ook. Kira shrugged him off, flicking her cigarette away before standing up. Goosebumps. I'm actually getting goosebumps. Seeing her like that, Julian couldn't bring himself to be angry. In a way, she probably had a point. He mulled over his own words, wondering how Leon would have reacted if he had been there to hear them. It didn't take long for an image to shape up in his mind. He'd probably be hunched over by the wall, hand over his mouth, doing his best not to puke. The thought alone seemed funny. To the point where Julian found his fingers twitching. Single quote. Should I just have a similar conversation with him? Your next chapter awaits on my virtual library empire. How much could he get him to puke? Fucking shit. Standing by her desk, Kira had her hand on her shoulder, muttering a string of curses under her breath. The more Julian looked at her, the more she just seemed to remind him of his past self. Was this why he had spoken so much nonsense? Maybe so. Kira probably didn't understand what he meant by what he said. She probably wouldn't for a while, and that was okay. It took Julian an endless amount of pain and torture in order for him to get to this point. And even then, he was still far from perfect. He was still growing, and he was fine with growth. He had now learned to accept it. Kira was not yet there, but Julian could see she was trying even though she was failing miserably at it. That was why she reminded him so much of his past self. But even then, this wasn't the reason he had come to talk to her. I know I was also not that good, but I need your help. Kira was cut off mid-curse as her head snapped toward him, noticing the shift in Julian's demeanor, from a calm, collected presence to something colder. His sudden shift in demeanor threw her off. What sort of? I've got something in me. Julian lowered his head to grasp his shirt. It's trying to take over this body of mine, and even though I've managed to seal it for now, I don't know when the seal will break. It can be next month, it can be next week, it can be tomorrow, or it can even be now. Kira found herself unable to move as she listened to his words. I'm managing so far, but it's taking a toll on me, you know. Kira licked her lips, not knowing when this ticking time bomb can explode. If it truly takes over, what am I supposed to do? How can I stop it? Kira scratched her forehead. Can't you just tell the academy? Quote. Yes, already have. The reason it's sealed is because I got help from them. Then, it's not enough. Kira swallowed hard, a sudden wave of nervousness washing over her. Something about the way things were unfolding made her uneasy, as if she could sense where this was heading, and it was making her skin crawl. It couldn't. No, but it's impossible. There's no way. And yet, when she raised her head to look at him, all she saw was the all-knowing look in his eyes. Quote. The mirror, I need it. Kira felt her entire body sink as if plunged into the depths of a dark sea, the pressure closing in around her, suffocating her with each breath. Without realizing it, she took a step back, instinctively trying to escape the moment. Why you? How? All sorts of thoughts swirled in her mind. How does he know? There's no way he knows. It can't be that he. But before things could further escalate, Julian pressed his finger against his temple. I have a certain skill, he said, his voice just barely managing to get through her. When she paused to look at him, he clenched his jaw for a moment, a low breath escaping his lips before speaking. It's just glimpses, pictures, but for a brief moment. I can see the future. 545. Kira took a moment to fully digest my words. Pinching the middle of her brows, she opened her mouth and then closed it before opening it again and closing it again. You what now? When she finally managed to speak again, I found her looking at me as though I was some sort of lunatic. No, I really wasn't lying. I can see the future. Yes, I heard you the first time. Then, you're drunk, aren't you? What sort of bullshit are you spouting? No, I'm not. I lowered my head to stare at the cigarette nestled in my fingers. With a shake of my head, I flicked the cigarette away. Oi, quote. You did it too, but this is my room. Too late, tisk. I disregarded her and stomped my foot on the butt of the cigarette, extinguishing it. In the meantime, Kira sat down on the chair next to her desk. She sat there in silence for a few seconds before finally opening her mouth again. So, about the nonsense you previously said, are you for real? I raised my head and looked at her. Her expression changed shortly after that. Given my current expression, she probably got the message. Quote. And you're saying that the reason you think I have the mirror is because of your ability to see the future? Something like that. I thought for a moment before adding. I can't see much of the future. Just flashes and images. It happens randomly, and it's part of my innate skill. Oh, Kira still didn't seem very convinced. Couldn't really blame here, but considering how many unique innate skills existed, this wasn't too far-fetched. There were, after all, many people who had similar, foresight, types of skills in the world. There were types that required certain relics, while others were more random, sporadic like mine. And in truth, I wasn't actually being extremely truthful to her. I was severely downplaying my ability by quite a lot, but it couldn't be helped. The ability to see the future was very closely tied to Oricleus. Regardless of how much I wanted to tell someone about Oricleus, there was simply no way for me to do so. Especially not when there was a maniac who had eyes and ears all over the entire world. Even mentioning the name, Oricleus, set me on edge. For now, this was probably the best explanation that I could use to avoid any ties with the inverted sky. Future, huh? Kira massaged her chin. She still seemed unconvinced, but the more she mumbled to herself, the more relaxed her expression became. It was then that she looked at me. Quote, "Is the reason why you disappear so often related to that ability of yours?" My face almost cracked at her sudden question. That also explains how you suddenly become so strong whenever you return. Fuck, she looked at me. Quote, "You fucking cheat." Oh, I forced a smile. Yeah, no, she was way off the mark here. If only the visions were the reason for my disappearances. Many times, the visions had nothing to do with them. My increase in strength was also due to a different thing, but I guess this works. You got me. And so, I rolled with it. The ability lets me glimpse into futures that are loosely connected to me in the form of images. Not long ago, I saw a vision of you, holding a mirror. I wasn't sure what the mirror represented, but its image stuck with me. So, I went to the library to dig deeper, and that's when I discovered the astral mirror. Quote. Kira's crimson eyes stared intently at me the moment I finished speaking. I felt sweat trickle down the side of my face under her gaze. Did she believe my lie, or not? All sorts of thoughts swam in my head as I tried my best to recall my words and see if there were any holes in anything that I had said. I was nervous, but I didn't show it. I couldn't show it. The mirror was of great importance to me, so I couldn't screw this up. I was just worried she'd call me out on my nonsense. Just as the silence started to feel suffocating, Kira's lips parted. How accurate do you say your images are? Quote. More or less accurate, more or less. Unless I do something to alter that future, it is accurate. I see. Kira licked her lips, her brows furrowing tightly. Quote. And what exactly was I doing in that vision of yours? You were looking at the mirror, in your room. In my room. Kira raised her brow. Yes, the room in your house. The one with the big single bed, pink curtains, the large wooden wardrobe, the big wooden table, and all those teddy bears. All right, enough. Kira suddenly cut me off. Before I could continue, because it was dark, I couldn't quite see her features, but I could see that she was embarrassed. This was what I was aiming for. Having caught a glimpse of her memories using the second leaf, I knew exactly how her room looked. I used this information that I shouldn't have been able to know to make my claim a lot more believable. And staring at her face, I could tell that she was pretty much convinced. Good thinking. I secretly sighed in relief while waiting for her to recover from her embarrassment. I don't judge. One more word and I'm calling Aoife over to sing for you. Quote. My mouth shut faster than I ever thought was possible. For a brief moment, I even thought I saw a string of notifications appear in my vision. They were just hallucinations, but I was convinced they'd become real if Aoife truly came and held a concert. Oh God, I even found myself biting my own fist. Right, with a subtle caca, Kira leaned back on her chair, seemingly looking more relaxed. If she didn't buy my story before, she seemed a lot more on board now. At the very least, I was no longer worried about her getting suspicious about my ties with the inverted sky. I guess I somehow managed to make things work out. Things were going smoothly and I was just about to sigh in relief when. It's all good and all, but. Kira looked at me with a somewhat helpless expression. Quote. Even if you asked me, I actually don't know where the mirror is. The mirror shit, I don't remember anything at all. I've tried recalling, but it's as if there's a hole in my mind. I have no idea where the mirror is. Suddenly recalling what had happened when I tried looking through her past, I knew that she wasn't lying. Indeed, even in her memories, I couldn't see what had happened. Just when I was on the verge of giving up, Kira spoke, pulling my focus back. But it's not like I am completely clueless about where the mirror could be. My brows jumped up. I was just about to speak again when she cut me off. The only issue is that I don't want to go back there. Her face scrunched up. That place, I don't want to go. Academy training grounds. Aoife fixed her gaze on the ground in front of her, where a collection of weapons was spread out. In the distance stood several training dummies, set up to test her strength. These dummies were exceptionally durable, requiring a powerful blow to break through their tough exteriors. In the events that followed the exhibition, Aoife found herself lost in her own thoughts more and more. She raised her head and looked around her. The training grounds were mostly empty, with only a few people scattered around, yet as she stood there, she couldn't shake the feeling of being surrounded by countless eyes, all watching, all judging. Every glance felt heavy, every silence, defeating, every sound felt loud. Aoife bit her lip, fully aware that it was all in her head. The glances weren't truly aimed at her. The silence wasn't a judgment. The sounds weren't whispers of scorn directed at her. But she couldn't help it. No matter how hard she tried to reassure herself, her mind refused to believe it. She knew that there was a lot to be desired from her. She was the princess of the empire, someone who was going to be looked up to by many of the people in the empire. How could she proudly raise her head when she was so painfully weak? With all her advantages and resources, how could she be lagging behind? Your journey continues on my virtual library empire. While she knew the judges and stares were merely in her mind, she also knew that they did exist. Someone out there was speaking about her, talking about her inadequacies, and comparing her to the others. It made her uncomfortable. Worst of all wasn't even her lack of strength. The worst part was that she had become so complacent with herself that it took Kira's words to snap her back to reality. Everyone was growing, but what about her? Had she grown? This can't go on. They had a week off. In that week, many of the cadets were given time to go back to their families and rest. Aoife discarded all of that. She was lagging behind, and she knew that she had to catch up. Staring at the array of weapons laid out before her, she raised her hand, and the bodies of each weapon hovered in the air before her. From swords to spears to hammers, a variety of weapons floated effortlessly around her. Teresa, calling out a name, a little figure appeared next to her legs. Blinking her large eyes, she looked around, her hair a little messy. I need some help. Oh, yawning, Teresa flicked her hand, and several of the weapons instantly transformed. The sword erupted into flames, the hammer was encased in a thick layer of rock, and a gust of wind spiraled around the spear, causing it to rotate rapidly. Aoife's face paled considerably at the sight before her. She felt her mana draining from her body, but as she gazed at the weapons before her, her eyes sharpened. Her performance at the exhibition had been disappointing. She knew it, and because of that, she dedicated most of her time to refining herself. She completely overhauled her regular style and opted for something different. This was the result. There's more to work on, but this is definitely the right step. Biting her lips, Aoife extended her hand forward. Without hesitation, the weapons around her spun into the air, then shot off sharply into the distance. The spear was the fastest. At the speed that took one to blink, it appeared right before the nearest training dummy, impaling its core in a smooth fashion. Swoosh! The sword followed, slicing through the dummy with precision, cleaving it in half. A sharp, red line appeared across the severed section of the dummy. And then, a large shadow loomed over the dummy, steadily expanding as layers of earth piled up around the hammer. Until, with a deafening crack, the ground beneath the dummy shattered, sending debris flying as the hammer surged with power. Bang! A terrifying explosion reverberated through the surroundings, forcing Aoife to cover her face as her hair fluttered back. By the time everything settled down, nothing remained of the dummy. In its stead was a massive crater. Breathing heavily, Aoife looked at the crater with a confused look. That was me. She blinked her eyes, and it was then that she noticed it. The gazes. They were looking at her again. But this time, they were different from the previous one. She couldn't see any judgment in them. No, all she could see in them was shock and horror. Aoife found herself licking her lips while lowering her gaze to stare at Teresa. Maybe, just maybe, she was growing. 546. This is more troublesome than I expected. Coming back from Kira's room, I ruffled my hair in annoyance. She knows where the mirror might be, but she's unwilling to go there. I could only think of one place where she didn't want to return. That'd be none other than her own house. The place where her mother was killed, and she found her beloved aunt responsible for it. Given what I knew about the circumstances in her past, I couldn't really blame her for not wanting to go there. Still, time was ticking for me. I needed to tackle the situation before it was too late. I couldn't wait for things to go to shit before acting out on the problem. That'd be irresponsible and stupid. I had already dragged on the situation for far too long. On a good note, I at least know where to look. The only problem is getting there. It's not like I could just show up at her house unannounced and say, "Hello, my name's Julian, I'm Kira's classmate. You might know me as the Twee, the summit winner. I'm here to look for something on her behalf. A mirror of sorts. Do you have any clue?" If anything, it would be incredibly suspicious, especially since the place had already been thoroughly searched by the inverted sky beforehand. Not only would I be incredibly suspicious, but I'd also be searching for a needle in a haystack. If they couldn't find it, what made me think I could? Single quote. In some sense, it's vital that I get Kira to come with me. No, not just here, but with the others too. I had to make it seem like some sort of friendly homecoming to throw off any suspicion. Kira might also be more comfortable if more than one person came with her. At the very least, she had to be there. If anyone had the highest chance of finding the mirror, it was undoubtedly her. Only problem was convincing her to go back. Remembering the expression she had when talking about her place, I knew convincing her wasn't going to be easy. As a matter of fact, it probably seemed like an impossible mission. Even so, I had to try. This was too important for me to give up on or drag on for any longer. And this is also a great opportunity considering that we have the week off. It wasn't easy to get free time and leave the academy grounds. I planned on getting my hands on the mirror before the academy resumed. Alright, I guess I should. I paused halfway through my sentence as I turned my head and spotted a certain figure, sitting down on my chair, her legs and arms crossed. Quote. Pausing, I licked my lips. They were strangely dry. When did she? You're here. In spite of my shock, I managed to play it cool. If there was one thing I was good at, it was keeping a cool face even in the most dire of situations. At least, this was what I thought. Feeling her gaze, which seemed unusually intense, I found my face slowly starting to change. Keep it cool, keep it cool. In spite of my best attempts, my face continued to change. Under those deep black eyes of hers that seemed to see through everything, my face wouldn't stop changing and I eventually found myself turning to look away from her. I bit my lips and secretly lamented to myself. Why does this always happen with her? She really was the only one that could get me to break. Even Cithras wasn't like this. All of a sudden, Delilah's nose scrunched up as she sniffed the air. You smoke. Quote. Rarely. Just how sharp are her senses? I had made sure to hide the smell, and yet. Oh, I see. Delilah looked unconvinced, her eyes narrowing. I could only shrug my shoulders. I wasn't lying. I rarely did smoke. Still, what incredible pressure. Thankfully, I was somewhat used to her antics and just waited for her to calm down. If push comes to shove, I could just bribe her. I had a whole guide in my mind on how to deal with her now. No, but more than anything. What are you doing here? Delilah didn't usually show up unannounced unless she had something to tell me or needed something from me. As expected, right after I spoke, her eyes returned to normal, and she stood up. I need your help with something. Me. This surprised me. What exactly could someone of Delilah's stature need help from me for? Although I didn't understand, I nonetheless nodded my head. Sure. It was only then that Delilah appeared satisfied. Raising her hand, she snapped her finger, and my vision started to spin. Wah! I barely had any time to process the situation before. My body was suddenly teleported to a completely different place. Bright lights filtered down from above, momentarily blinding me. Ook! Squinting to adjust to the sudden brightness, I blinked a few times before taking in my surroundings. It was then that I finally noticed where I was, an enormous room stretching out before me. Bright ceiling lights illuminated the space above, and in the distance, an enormous glass panel appeared. My breath caught in my throat, and my eyes widened in disbelief the moment my eyes laid on the figure lying behind the glass panel, as my chest started to tremble. It's a destroyer-ranked creature that I recently managed to capture. Delilah's voice drifted next to me. The calmness in her tone made it seem as though she were talking about something trivial. But no, this was far from trivial. I could tell from the pressure alone that the creature was even stronger than Almighty who had just reached the destroyer rank. I knew its power all too well, and it was also for that reason that I had no choice but to leave Almighty back at the Kasha. Until I found a way to stop others from figuring out it was a monster, I had no choice but to part ways. It was simply too powerful now. Anyone would be able to tell it was no regular owl. A destroyer rank, regardless of how much they tried to hide it, was hard to miss. They just felt like beings that stood at the top of the food chain. For her to have subdued such a powerful creature, she really is fucking strong. But that suddenly made me recall her previous words and my eyes jumped up. Wait, you said you wanted my help. It can't be that. Yes. Delilah didn't even glance at me, her gaze locked on the creature behind the glass. With its eyes closed and the soft rise and fall of its chest, it looked as though it were sleeping. The creature's entire body was covered in black, almost as if it were darkness itself. Its size was colossal, and it seemed to be a hybrid of a dragon and a lizard. A wyvern. The creature should be a nocthros, and I can sense a bone within its body. Oh, I nodded absent-mindedly before finally snapping out of it. Oh, all of a sudden, I understood what she needed my help for, and my expression couldn't help but change. Quote. Oh, damn it, as expected, only she could make me change my expression so often. I've been curious ever since I saw it with the little girl that Aoife has. I originally planned on killing the nocthros, but I recalled what she showed me and was interested in trying it myself. Delilah's calm and composed voice made it sound like she was about to attempt something trivial, but if anything, this was the soul of a destroyer rank. Even if she was powerful, she had to have the mind to subdue the monster. The fact that she wanted to create her own will out of a destroyer rank monster. She was crazy. No, if it's her. Before that, I suddenly recalled something and looked at Delilah in shock. Enjoy new stories from my virtual library empire. Wait, if you're planning on taking the monster's bone, are you saying you can still absorb bones? She didn't have all her slots filled. Oh, yes, this woman. Quote. I still have a slot left. Father had one to give to me, but I was too busy, and I didn't really have time. It's good that it worked out like this. My lip twitched listening to her voice. Will you help me or not? Delilah alternated her gaze between me and the monster, looking somewhat impatient. I opened my mouth, but feeling her gaze, and seeing those eyes of hers, I found myself lowering my head and nodding. Yes, normally, I wouldn't be confident or comfortable with handling something of this caliber. However, if there was one thing I was confident in, it'd be my mental strength. Not only that, I also felt reassured about my safety. With Delilah present, why would I even need to worry about my safety? Good. A satisfied expression crossed Delilah's face, and I watched as the corner of her lips curled up slightly before fading away. She then turned and headed toward the monster in the distance. As if sensing her presence, the monster slowly opened its eyes, revealing its enormous inverted pupils. The moment its eyes locked onto Delilah, I noticed a distinct shift in its demeanor. It sat up and slowly moved back, wary. It was almost as if it was scared. What sort of? The glass panel faded as Delilah neared it, and the monster suddenly opened its mouth, as if to scream. However, before it could make a sound, Delilah clenched her fist, and all the noise stopped instantly. The monster did scream, but no sound came out of its movements. Its eyes trembled, and a powerful pressure filled the air. But to Delilah, it seemed like nothing more than a joke. Unfazed, she continued her walk, slowly approaching the monster, which had backed itself into the corner of the wall. I almost thought I saw it whimper as Delilah, who seemed no bigger than an ant compared to the creature, drew closer. Eventually, she stopped right before it and extended her hand. Are you ready? Her gentle voice drifted smoothly into my ears and I found myself nodding my head. Quote. Yes. Good. A powerful glow enveloped the entire room and my entire vision shifted. By the time I regained consciousness, I found myself standing on top of a large black glacier. Pulling myself together, I looked up to see two creatures hovering in the air, each locking eyes with the other as a terrifying pressure washed over the surroundings. I knew then that it had started. The battle for supremacy. 547. Bang! A powerful surge of pressure erupted from above, making my hair and clothes ripple. But that was really all there was to it. Staring up above, I didn't feel particularly suffocated by the pressure emitted from above. In fact, I almost felt as though I was on even grounds with them. But just here, this was merely the mental space of the wyvern-like creature that Delilah was trying to tame. Raorg. As I gazed ahead, the creature seemed genuinely frightened of Delilah. She stood tall, her back straight, the black coat billowing behind her as she calmly slipped her hands into her pockets and stared ahead in silence. She appeared utterly unfazed by the creature, her intense gaze locking with it without a hint of fluster. It was as if she was looking at a small animal. She's trying to tame it through fear. Suddenly, a voice reached my ears. When I looked down, I saw a black cat, its eyes fixed on the spot where Delilah stood. As it quietly stared in her direction, Pebble proceeded to shake its head. Taming it through fear won't work. Oh, this was new to me. In hindsight, I wasn't fully aware of how acquiring a will worked. If it was simply through domination, there'd be many more people with wills. After all, one still needed to destroy the will hidden within the bone in order for them to acquire it. In that case, it made sense for the domination method to not work. The best approach is to lure its will to follow you through an exchange. Just like you did with that foolish owl, and with me. Is that so? This made sense. Some wills would rather die than be forced to. Bang! A deafening explosion rippled through the air, scattering chunks of ice in all directions as a blanket of snow quickly engulfed my sight. I raised my arm to shield my eyes, stepping back to get a better view of what was unfolding. As the snow settled, I spotted Delilah, standing firmly atop the wyvern's head. When did she surrender? Her gaze was cold, nearly as cold as the surroundings, while the wyvern glared back at her, its defiance unmistakable from where I stood as its eyes were raised to look straight at her. Surrender to me, beast. Delilah's leg pressed down harder on the wyvern's muzzle, and the defiance in its eyes became even more evident. Wait, stop, I quickly interrupted things before they could become worse. Quote. As Delilah turned her head, her large crystal eyes blinked as they met mine. The way she looked at me now was starkly different from how she had just moments before, throwing me off with the sudden contrast. Come, I quickly recovered with a cough and started to explain to her what Pebble had told me. You can't tame a will through fear and domination. You have to make a deal with them. Taming through force never works. It's highly likely the creature will never accept it. Is that so? With a slight tilt of her head, Delilah looked momentarily surprised before her gaze shifted downward to the wyvern. Then, as her eyes met with the monster, she raised her foot. What are you doing? I immediately grew startled by her actions and moved towards her, stopping her just at the nick of time. What do you mean what? You're just looking to kill it at this point. I am, but weren't you trying to create a will? Yes, before. Then, Delilah looked down, her gaze meeting the wyvern's, which glared at her with obvious scorn. At that moment, I understood. Indeed, from the way things look, it does seem very improbable for her to strike a deal with it. The hatred and rage the monster had for her was quite clear to see. Its innate pride also prevented it from forming a will with Delilah. As things stood, it seemed like she had no other choice but to destroy it. At the very least, she was going to get a good bone. Ah, what a pity. I no longer saw the need to stop her and stepped to the side. Noticing that I understood, Delilah lifted her foot once more, ready to end its suffering. Just as she was about to strike, a figure suddenly materialized in front of the wyvern. Quote. Delilah stopped once more, her large eyes blinking as Pebble stood before the wyvern. She then immediately turned to look at me, her gaze seeming to say, "You're seeing what I'm seeing. It's a cat. The cat is with me." It was only when I clarified things that she seemed to get the message. She pulled her foot back and watched Pebble with an expression of rare interest. Her pupils seemed to dilate slightly as her lips tightened. I blinked my eyes and alternated my gaze between Pebble and Delilah. Wait, why does she seem so interested? It can't be that. Looking down at her hands, I saw one of her fingers twitch. No way. Submit to the female woman. Pebble's voice snapped me out of my thoughts. Surprised, I turned to look at the cat, its gaze fixed on the wyvern with an unusual intensity. It almost seemed to be trying to command the wyvern. That sight, it feels off. Not only was Pebble far weaker than the wyvern, but its size was also tiny in comparison. The wyvern dwarfed Delilah, let alone Pebble, who was nothing but a small cat. Even Delilah seemed to find the situation weird, but more than that, her mouth squeezed even more. She really seemed to want to pet Pebble. It would be in your best interest to submit to the female human. You've already felt her power. There is no shame in yielding to the strong. MPH. The wyvern snorted hot air from its nostrils, its gaze dripping with mockery as it locked eyes with Pebble. Small and weak cat, who are you to tell me to submit? For the first time since the beginning, the wyvern spoke, its voice Deep and crisp, the contempt and arrogance in its tone were unmistakable. I would rather be destroyed than submit to the female human. Its vertical pupil shifted toward Delilah, its gaze laced with mockery. She may be strong, but I come from the proud bloodline of dragons. My future is limitless, while hers is bound. I see no reason to submit to someone of inferior blood. You seem very proud of your bloodline, little bird. Bird. The wyvern shifted its gaze away from Delilah, directing it back to Pebble, who met its stare with judgmental eyes. It almost felt like it was looking down on it. No, Pebble really is looking down on it. I had seen that gaze many times in the past. Isn't that what you are? A bird that wishes to be a dragon? What? Explore more at my virtual library empire. Rumble. The surroundings quaked as the wyvern struggled to rise. Its body was bruised and broken, yet in its fury, it managed to push itself upright despite the pain. What did you say? A massive shadow loomed over us as the wyvern rose, its towering form looking down at the small cat, who remained completely unfazed. Quote. I called you a little bird with the dreams of being a dragon. Standing next to Delilah, I saw her look with interest. Judging from her body language, she was ready to attack at any second. On the other hand, I was a little surprised by Pebble's actions. Pebble was certainly bold, but I'd never seen it act this way before. Could it be tied to its dragon bloodline? Perhaps Pebble naturally held itself above the wyvern-like creature, seeing its bloodline as inferior to its own. It was just a guess, but that guess proved true shortly after. Cat, I may be injured, but this is enough to destroy you. The wyvern's deep, resonant voice rumbled through the air as it flapped its wings, releasing a powerful surge of pressure. All of it focused on Pebble, who blinked its large eyes, seeming completely unfazed. At least, on the outside. I could tell it was hardly keeping up its facade. I guess it's good that Delilah battered it beforehand. Otherwise, an image of Pebble being crushed beneath the wyvern's massive foot flashed through my mind. No, I shouldn't laugh at this. Why did the image seem so funny? Bang! A sudden explosion jolted me, followed by another shadow looming over the area. I snapped my head up in surprise and saw a colossal figure materialize before me. Its massive rocky wings unfurled, and its frame quickly grew larger than the wyvern's. Roar! It wasn't long before Pebble let out a deafening roar, its stone-like scales inversing as its immense form started to dominate the surroundings, exuding an aura of sheer dominance. Everything seemed to come to a standstill then as I felt a certain gaze from my side. When I turned my head, I was surprised to see Delilah staring at me with her mouth hanging open in an O shape. She looked surprised. No, before that, since when was Delilah this expressive? I hadn't really put much thought into it in the past, but Delilah was starting to become more and more expressive. The usual her would have normally reacted with a simple glance before looking disinterested. And yet, little bird, Pebble's voice suddenly echoed through the air, now deeper and more commanding than ever, causing the wyvern to take an instinctive step back in surprise. Quote. I am what you might consider a dragon. You, on the other hand, are just a feeble bird trying to become what I am. Your arrogance is unfounded. Pebble's eyes narrowed. If even I choose to become a will, with what arrogance can you say that you don't want to? Shut up. Pebble cut through the wyvern's voice before it could even let out its words. I have no interest in your excuses. Your pride holds no weight against mine. Your lineage is insignificant compared to my own. Your lifespan is but a mere joke when compared to mine. Surpassing your strength is nothing more than a trivial task for me. The more Pebble spoke, the more restless the wyvern seemed to become. I could see the wyvern growing more and more restless. Indeed, Pebble wasn't holding back at all. It was completely and utterly aiming to shatter its pride. But why was Pebble doing this? Was its goal to get it angry? Why would? There's nothing about you that is comparable to mine. Nothing but. Pebble suddenly stopped, its gaze falling on Delilah. Though it didn't say anything else, its message was clear. Yes, it was clear. Quote. I opened and closed my mouth before clenching my teeth. Oi, bastard. 548. Pebble's strategy was great. Play through the wyvern's pride, and use it against it in order to convince it to form a will. It was great and all, with Pebble picking up a few things here and there from me, but did you seriously have to throw shots at me like that? I understand that Delilah was exceptional. She was likely among the top 10 strongest people in the world. Only a few individuals were probably stronger than her, and most of them were old monsters on the verge of death or had lived for more than a human's natural lifespan. She was young and had an entire future ahead. She was great. It's frustrating that I can't even argue back. Indeed, if the wyvern signed a pact with Delilah, it would have something that Pebble didn't have, which was, a better host. Damn, cat. In spite of my inner turmoil, I didn't show anything on the outside. I merely looked at Pebble with eyes slightly more narrowed than usual. Pebble didn't seem bothered by my stare and kept its attention fixed on the wyvern, which shifted its gaze between me and Delilah. Feeling the wyvern's judgmental gaze, I found myself licking my lips. I could practically read its thoughts aloud. My bloodline is weaker, my future is worse, my pride is insignificant, but if I... Soon enough, what I expected to happen happened, with Pebble successfully manipulating the poor wyvern. It even started to wear a smug expression as it eyed Pebble, gradually shifting its body toward Delilah. At the same time, it cast a glance in my direction, as if to say, I may not have a pure bloodline, but at least I'm not the will of a weak human. Tisk. My tongue unconsciously clicked. I should have just let Delilah kill it when she had the chance. Human. Arriving before Delilah, the wyvern bent down, its move facing her direction. Consider yourself fortunate. I'm willing to become your will. In return, you must vow to help me acquire a new body once you break free from your current restraints. If you do so, I'll follow you and help you for the remaining years to come. Delilah didn't say anything at first. She seemed a bit taken aback by the turn of events, but after shooting me a quick look, she placed her hand gently on the wyvern's muzzle. The instant her hand touched the wyvern, a blinding black glow erupted from her, engulfing everything around us, including me. It all happened so fast that I didn't have the time to react. By the time I reacted, it was already too late. The world around me plunged into complete darkness. Luckily, the darkness didn't linger for long. Within seconds, the darkness began to dissipate, and before I knew it, I found myself back in the vast room Delilah had brought me to earlier. The wyvern's massive body lay motionless behind the large glass window, a black bone hovering above it. Delilah swiftly reached out, claiming the bone and seamlessly integrating it with herself. Regaining my composure, I glanced around quickly, finally locking my gaze on her. Deli, Chancellor. I moved toward her, but to my surprise, her attention was fixed elsewhere. She didn't seem to notice me at all, her focus locked on something before her. When I reached her, I tilted my head to the side and saw a small black crow on the ground. Its figure was slightly chubby, and it sat there, bruises scattered across its body. When I tilted my head to look at Delilah, I saw her wear a weird expression as her lips squeezed together. As it gently patted its body, the crow managed to lift itself up and was about to speak when Delilah's lips finally parted. I don't want it. Be it the crow or me, we both looked at her in surprise. Her next words froze both of our expressions. It's ugly. I don't want it. A few hours later, honestly, I think you're exaggerating, I said. The only reason it looks like that is because of how much you beat it up. Once it recovers, it'll start looking better. I tried my best to calm Delilah down. As we headed back to her office, she sat down, her expression neutral, but the dissatisfaction was unmistakable. She wasn't happy with her will. I never took her for someone who cared much about aesthetics. But more than anything, I turned my head, my gaze falling on the corner of the room where a solitary figure stood. Its back was hunched, and its wing twisted in circles against the floor. What does it mean to be alive? For a moment, I thought the area it was in had turned completely gray. Honestly, this wasn't the reaction I'd expected from the fearsome, powerful creature Delilah had been battling just moments ago. I couldn't even associate the two. I get that Delilah's words were hurtful, but I didn't expect them to induce depression. Then again, thinking about my own wills and Aoife's will, I came to the realization that all wills were just weird. Staring at the crow, I even started to feel bad. Scratching the side of my neck and seeing that Delilah still seemed unsatisfied by the crow, I found myself moving next to it. Hey, oh, the crow merely acknowledged my presence before going back to twirling its wing on the ground. It then started to spew its own gibberish. Life is more than aesthetics. It's about the soul. The situation looked worse than I had imagined. I hadn't even seen Pebble be this depressed in the times it got bullied by Almighty. Thinking for a moment, I reached into my pocket and pulled out a small chocolate bar, carefully opening it. At the same time, I made sure Delilah couldn't see or smell it. Catching a glimpse of her, I saw she hadn't noticed a thing, so I lowered my voice and whispered. Here, eat this. Smelling the chocolate, the crow turned its head to look at it. Cocking its head a little, it reached forward with its beak and took a small bite of it. Quote ellipsis dot exclamation mark quote. Almost immediately, its eyes widened in surprise. What intense flavor. Wait. The crow's eyes sparkled as it locked onto the chocolate. Before I even had a chance to process what was happening, it lunged at the bar, swallowing it all in one swift gulp. I didn't even have the time to react before all the chocolate was gone. I lowered my head, staring at the empty wrapper, then at the crow covered in chocolate. I pursed my lips, unsure whether to be amused or annoyed. Who said they weren't a match? This crow really took after its master. But at the same time I thought this, I started to have a terrible feeling. A really terrible one. What's this? A voice whispered in my ear, and before I could react, a figure appeared beside me. She was so quick that I barely had time to process it, and when she glanced over, her eyes immediately locked onto the crow and the wrapper in my hand. Her previously indifferent expression shifted as her eyes slowly widened, her gaze flicking back and forth between the crow and me. She had an expression that screamed, "Why did you betray me?" Again. No, I didn't. Unfortunately, whatever word I said would go on deaf ears with her as her foot slung towards the crow, sending it flying away. Dank. Okay. The crow let out a pained groan as it tumbled across the room. By the time it hit the ground again, Delilah's cold eyes were fixed on it. You fat pig. So she called the crow. You took what's mine. Realistically speaking, it's mine. With a pale face, she pointed at the crow. As expected, I need to get rid of you. A monster will always be a monster. No, wait. She raised her foot and kicked the crow again. Okay. The sight was both disturbing and comical. Seeing Delilah so aggrieved was a rather interesting sight. In any case, I wasn't too worried about the crow. It was in the form of a will, so regardless of what Delilah did to it, it wouldn't die or suffer any real pain. Disgusting pig. Ellipsis dot. At least physically. Mentally, I wasn't so sure. But, lard of fat, this is a new side of Delilah. Seeing her cold yet disgusted gaze as she kicked the crow, I won't lie, I found myself unable to look away from her. There was something about the way she carried herself, so commanding. Gulp. Wait. I quickly snapped out of my thoughts as I pressed my hand against my chest. I felt a disturbing beat in there, and my lips twisted. Slapping the sides of my cheeks, I quickly snapped out of my state as I took a step back. What sort of thoughts was I just having? Did all the pain I previously suffered turn me into a... No, it can't be. I quickly shook my head and dismissed those thoughts. Such dangerous thoughts. Is something wrong? It was as if she had some kind of sensor. Delilah's head snapped to face me, her face only a few inches from mine. I took a step back, startled. I was caught off guard, and as I stared at her face, her perfectly shaped features, long silky black hair, and those deep eyes, I couldn't help but feel myself growing flustered. This is bad. Julian, did something happen? Find more chapters on my virtual library empire. No. Yes, something did happen. But not in a good way. Fuck, get away. Then, I licked my lips, doing my best to keep a straight face as a mix of thoughts flooded my mind. In the end, I decided to bluff my way out of the situation. Only that, I just thought you were, very pretty. Quote ellipsis dot quote. Quote dot 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 quote. I fucked up. 549. It was an awkward couple of seconds. Shortly after my words, the surroundings turned quiet as neither one of us spoke. Fuck, I wanted to curse myself. Of all the things that I could have said, those were the words that left my mouth. Seriously, I wanted to bash my head against a wall, but right as I was about to do so, I paused and realized something. Am I even wrong? Realistically speaking, she was undeniably beautiful, so much so that one might even think she was an alien of sorts. And the truth was, she knew it, so technically, there was nothing wrong with what I had said. Right, she should be used to this. She's probably unfazed by my words. I was just about to double down when Delilah spoke. Can you say that again? I raised my head and looked at her. She was staring at me with her usual, intense gaze. No, it looked even more intense than usual. In fact, her mouth appeared to be open, the edges of her lips pulled into a weird, yet creepy smile. Was that a smile? Goosebumps. I'm feeling goosebumps. Whatever she was doing, it was sending chills down my body as I unconsciously stepped back. Again, say it. You're pretty. Quote ellipsis dot quote. Delilah didn't say anything and just scratched the side of her face while looking down slightly. The weird smile widened, and I took another step back. Crazy goosebumps. Again. Quote ellipsis dot. I'd rather not. You wanna die? Right now. I don't mind. Anything to get me away from that creepy expression of hers. Thankfully, my words were enough to cool her weird expression down, and soon, she became expressionless again. Though, at least, that was how she appeared on the surface. I could read the faint traces of disappointment in her gaze. Looking at me with her usually indifferent gaze, she dismissed me with her hand. Okay, go. Yes. I didn't say anything else and prepared to turn around and leave. I just reached the door to feel the cool touch of the doorknob when I suddenly paused. I pursed my lips tightly, recalling the subtle hint of disappointment I'd noticed in her otherwise indifferent gaze, and let out a sigh. You know what? Delilah's voice was somewhat cold. I wasn't lying when I said you're pretty. For a moment, you had me entranced. I didn't really know what came over me. Perhaps it was the visible disappointment on her face moments prior, or just a stupid whim of mine, but I found these words slipping out of my mouth. By the time I realized what I had said and to whom I had said it, it was already too late. Nonetheless, I pretended to maintain my cool and managed to slip out of the room. Clank. As I closed the door behind me, I waved my hand in the air, dismissing the multiple notifications in the air. What an annoying bug. Although, at heart, I knew it wasn't a bug. So fucking dangerous. For me. Tap, tap. Delilah's diary was speckled with dots as she absent-mindedly tapped her pen against the pages. She had been like this for the past hour, trying to force herself to write but unable to do so. Her mind was currently overwhelmed by a single scene, one that kept replaying over and over again. You know what? I wasn't lying when I said you're pretty. For a moment, you had me entranced. Like a broken record, the words kept playing over and over in her mind. No matter how hard she tried to clear her thoughts, they just wouldn't fade away. Delilah lowered her head to stare at the diary once more, scratching the side of her cheek. She continued to do so until she finally stopped, her brows creasing as she moved her hand away and looked at it. Since when did she used to do this? Rather, wasn't this Julian's thing? Or was it? Delilah found herself massaging her forehead. She was finding herself acting weirder and weirder these days. Was this a good thing or a bad thing? Tap, tap, tapping onto the paper once more, she looked down and started writing a new bullet point. Dangerous. Very dangerous. For me. Kira, clean up your room. It's such a mess. Why are you such a slob? I knew I shouldn't have let you stay with your aunt. The more I look at you, the more you start to resemble and take after her. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? You're supposed to be my child, and yet you resemble her more than me. Hey Key, I like spring. I really like spring. Quote ellipsis dot dot quote. Opening her eyes, Kira stared at the familiar empty ceiling. Images flashed through her mind as she woke up, and as she looked around, she saw that she was in her room. What time is it? Checking the time, Kira saw that it was still quite early. She was just about to get ready to dress when she stopped herself and realized that their academy wouldn't start until a few days from now. Kira stood up and walked towards the balcony, feeling the cool, yet piercing air brush past her skin. It's getting warmer. Is it already spring? She mumbled, staring towards the empty academy grounds beneath. She reached up and gently brushed her hair behind her ear. How suffocating. The incoming heat. The incoming humidity. Everything about spring. She hated. Especially since it was also the same season her life turned around. Shit. TRR. It was then that her communication device sounded. It was a new one she bought after recently breaking her old one. Lowering her head, Kira glanced at the message. It was from Aoife. Just seeing her name made her wince. Braving through her disgust, she looked through the message, only for her to regret the decision immediately. Remember the exams that we took before leaving for the Kasha? The results are out. We can go and collect them now. Kira nearly threw her communication device. The only thing holding her back was her wallet. She simply couldn't afford to spend money on new communication devices. She let out a long sigh, gazing up at the blue sky before closing her eyes. At that moment, a soft breeze whispered past her. It was warmer than usual, reminding her once again that spring was coming. How suffocating. Everything about spring. She hated. Clank. Oh, are the three of you here to collect your final grades? Upon entering the classroom, Kira, Aoife, and Evelyn were greeted by the professor, who sat by the desk, holding onto a stack of papers. She adjusted her oval-shaped glasses and tucked her silky brown hair behind her ears, then offered a warm smile to the three of them. I only just recently got done marking your papers. Given everything that has been happening recently, I just barely managed to correct all of them. Quote. I wish you would have taken longer. Kira muttered quietly to herself, thinking her words were quiet enough to not reach the ears of the people in the room. Unfortunately for her, they were loud enough for everyone in the room to hear. Kira, Aoife was the first to react, her lips twitching slightly. She seemed rather conflicted. On one hand, she agreed with her, and on the other. I also wish the same, but a job is a job. Seemingly used to Kira's character, the professor merely smiled and handed them the papers. Overall, not bad, all three of you. She looked at Kira meaningfully while handing her the paper. Quote. I was rather surprised by your score. Not bad. Kira's brow rose in surprise. Taking the paper, she quickly looked at her score before her eyes widened. No way. What? Why are you reacting like that? What did you get? Noticing her reaction, Aoife and Evelyn grew curious and moved closer, eager to glimpse her score. But before they could, Kira quickly covered it and pulled the paper away. Fuck oh. Pausing, Kira glanced at the quietly sitting professor and pursed her lips. She then shoved the other two back. Go away. No, show me. Hurry. Hey, no. Kira quickly stepped back, but Aoife and Evelyn were relentless, clinging to her like octopuses, their hands exploring every inch of her body. I think I got it. Why does it feel so soft? Oi. Kira hastily pulled back as she looked at Aoife. Where do you think you're touching? That. Aoife lowered her head to stare at her hand. She squeezed the air a couple of times before mumbling. Cow, I'll kill you. Relax. Evelyn stopped Kira before she could go on a rampage. Wait, come on, you can't react like that and expect us not to be curious. Evelyn suddenly said, her gaze falling on Aoife. Look at her, she's barely containing herself. By now, Kira and Evelyn both understood Aoife very well. She was the type that couldn't hold her curiosity. A busybody. Quote. She's trembling. Indeed she was, but for a different reason. Kira glanced at her paper and then at Aoife. She looked pitiful. Re-up. So she ripped her paper. Evelyn stopped, and Aoife froze. Even the professor looked surprised, but then again, she didn't really mind. After all, her job was done. Kira proceeded to rip the paper further, prompting Evelyn to raise her voice. Wait, have you lost your mind? I get that you didn't want to show us your score, but to go as far as ripping it like that. If I asked you to show me your tits, would you? What sort of comparison? See, Kira shot a proud smile at the pale-faced Aoife, whose thoughts shifted away from the previous interaction and onto the paper. There was nothing that bugged Aoife more than not knowing something. Kira knew that, and she exploited that. In all honesty, her score was quite good. She didn't mind showing it off, but knowing Aoife's personality, she felt compelled to do this. As expected, seeing the current state of Aoife, it felt like she had made the right decision. Are the three of you done? Experience more on my virtual library empire. Breaking the chaos was the professor's words. She glanced at her pocket watch. I think it's about time the three of you head back. You've created enough chaos already. Well, fair. Kira didn't seem to object to her words. She also felt like there was nothing else for her to do here. After all, she had basically been dragged over by the two of them to collect her paper. She hadn't even wanted to be here in the first place. Oh, right. It was just as she was about to leave that the professor recalled something. With a soft smile, she looked at Kira. Congratulations on your new sibling. Kira's face faltered slightly. Turning around, she saw Aoife and Evelyn look at her with surprised expressions. She forced herself to remain composed as she looked back. Thank you. Those words. It made her want to puke. 550. You've got a sibling. Quote. Why is this the first time that I'm hearing this? The girls were now on their way back to the dorms. Of course, following the news regarding Kira's unexpected sibling, neither of the two could keep quiet. How could they not? A mini Kira had been unleashed on the world. We have to kill it before it's too late. Choking or strangling, aren't those the same thing? You're right. Quote. And it's not really that efficient. You're absolutely right. We need to make it quick and painless. It's more ethical that way. Right. What the fuck is this conversation? Listening in on the conversation, Kira found herself stopping. For some strange reason, she felt the two of them acting more and more like her. Was her influence rubbing off on them? Should I feel proud or sad? No. Most importantly, have the two of you lost it? They were talking about a young and innocent child. How could they say such horrible things? That's kind of fucked up from the two of you. Quote. She's seriously taking the moral high ground. Aoife and Evelyn both made similar disgusted faces while mumbling to each other. Also, wasn't she the one who laughed when she saw a child fall and cry? Quote. If anything, she also abuses Teresa. What in the fuck? Kira found herself unable to retort to the two of them. On one hand, they were right. On the other, they were, right again. Oh, shit, it was only then that it dawned on her. She really couldn't claim the moral high ground in this situation. Tisk. The only thing Kira could do was click her tongue. But seriously, how come you've never told us you were about to get a sibling? Quote. Kira stopped then. She was about to curse at them, but as her mouth opened, she stopped herself and scratched the back of her head. Quote. It's step-sibling. Oh. Realizing the heart of the matter, Aoife and Evelyn fell silent. My father remarried not long after my mother died. Kira scratched the back of her head again, her lips pulling down. I get moving on and shit, but a year, that's how fast it took that guy to move on. Just 1 year, and yet, I have yet to do so. Even worse, it feels like I can still recall her voice, her scent, and the warmth she gave, but, of everything I remember, her face is the one thing I can no longer remember. Recalling her face wasn't hard in the past. She'd always appear in her dreams, comforting her, telling her that everything was going to be okay, that the pain was going to be easy. And yet, the pain never eased. It never got easier, and it only got worse once she started to forget what she looked like. Wait, what was I just? Covering her mouth, Kira realized she had veered off track and quickly turned around, only to find Aoife and Evelyn staring at her with wide eyes. Shit, Kira scratched the back of her head. As expected, she really hated spring. Kira likes to curse a lot. Kira likes to hit a lot. Kira in general, was a delinquent. Aoife's impression of Kira was as such. As the princess of the empire, Aoife had a natural disdain for such people. It was hence why she disdained Kira from the first time she met her. When was it? It was certainly before the academy, but she couldn't quite remember. She used to meet a lot of people. In any case, Aoife's distaste carried to the academy. It also appeared that Kira disliked her at the start. The disdain was mutual. Great. This meant that the two of them didn't have to interact with each other often. Or so she naively thought. After some point, Aoife unknowingly found herself interacting more with her. To the point where she even found herself influenced by her. Why was that? Why did she get influenced by someone so crude? What about Kira drew her so much? Aoife struggled to answer this question at first, but the more she interacted with Kira, the clearer the answer became. It's because she's strong. She wasn't scared of letting people know what she thought or how they saw her. If she disliked someone, she'd make sure they'd know. Don't like me, I've got a pair of nice balls you can suck on till wanna try. It was such quality that drew Aoife to Kira. Because she herself knew she was weak. She wasn't like Kira who could disregard how the world perceived her. Who didn't give a fuck essentially. Aoife was extremely conscious of everything. From the subtle stares to the quiet whispers, she always felt judged. It was as if she stood in a crowded room, invisible yet acutely aware of every gaze, even though no one was truly looking. She felt like the star of a show that nobody was really watching. Was this why she liked acting so much? Because she was aware the gazes were actually judging her, instead of it being a trick of her mind. Perhaps that was the case, but her life wasn't an act. She knew that, and hence why she found herself drawn to Kira. Because of her strength. But, I guess even you have a weakness. Aoife stared at Kira, noticing the discomfort radiating from her. It was more intense than anything she'd seen before, almost as if Kira's usual confidence had cracked, leaving her exposed and vulnerable in a way Aoife had never seen before. She was like a broken plate filled with cracks, barely hanging on together. Well, whatever, shit. It's in the past. It's probably just me. I guess if I had a dick in my pants I'd also think differently. The usual crude words of hers. Aoife always felt like Kira was cursed because of her rough upbringing. But was this really the case? Quote. I'm even more surprised that thing works despite his age. What kind of pill did that guy take? The cruder Kira's words were, the more Aoife saw it. Or could it be that he went in all floppy and shit? Keck, bet she was just there for his money. Her discomfort, her exposed cracks. Well, whatever, I'll head back. I fucking hate the air over here. Throwing a middle finger at them, Kira turned around and headed in a different direction. It wasn't the dorms. Aoife silently followed Kira's back with her gaze. She's acting fine. But her acting really sucked. She looks lonely. Her back did. This was the first time Aoife had ever seen Kira like this, and it made her feel a little weird. Aoife was good at reading people, or at least, she liked to think so, and something about Kira's behavior told her more than words ever could. She had a feeling that Kira truly wanted to visit her sibling, or rather, her step-sibling, but didn't want to go on her own. I could be misreading the situation, but, scratching the side of her cheek, she took out her communication device and typed something before sending it over. Hey, Aoife quietly turned to Evelyn standing beside her, who still appeared somewhat stunned, as if she were processing everything that had just unfolded. Sensing her gaze, Evelyn snapped out of it. Before she could get her words out, she was promptly cut off by Evelyn. What do you think of seeing Kira's little sibling? Single quote. I'm the type to not mind my business. I love spring. It's probably the best season. The cold was gone, replaced by a refreshing, cool breeze. Flowers bloomed, and everything around them seemed more vibrant, alive with color and warmth. Spring. I really loved spring. With that being said, where is Leon? I knocked on his door multiple times, but it seemed like he wasn't in his room. I sent him a message, but there was no response. Was he just asleep? Even so, I had knocked hard enough for him to hear me. Is it possible that he ignored me? Yes, that was a very real possibility. A pity. I had hoped he could lend me a hand with my training. After recently returning from the Kasha, I realized just how much I was falling short and which areas I needed to focus on improving. Thankfully, I had managed to gain a new fighting style, but it still required a lot of polishing. There was no better testing dummy than Leon. Well, I can just ask Keys or Kalian. I was now comfortable enough to ask the two of them. If anything, Keys would probably be the best training partner for him. His domain would give me a run for my money. As soon as I left Delilah's office, I received a message from her saying she had successfully contacted the high-class cleric. They would be arriving just before the break ended. This gave me a sudden sense of urgency. While there was a chance that they might help me, there was also a chance they might figure something out. I couldn't allow that to happen. To make matters worse, when I tried to decline the offer, both she and the school board rejected my refusal without hesitation. They claimed something about me being a potential hazard. Not like they're wrong, but any of them can simply kill me with a flick of their finger. In the end, the situation turned into a hot mess. One that I had no idea how to escape from. Read exclusive chapters at my virtual library empire. That's why I decided to focus on training. I figured it would be the best way to clear my mind and distract myself from everything else. Even so, time wasn't stopping for me. I really needed to figure out how to handle this situation before it was too late. But how? How exactly can I? Lost in my thoughts, I suddenly felt a vibration from my pocket. Pulling out my communication device, I was taken aback to see a message from Aoife, sent directly to me. Her of all people, she rarely sent me messages. What could? As I opened the message, the words seemed to vanish from my mind, and my jaw dropped in shock. Say, do you want to go visit Kira's house? I heard she recently had a new sibling. Since when was Aoife this likable?